Right, Diane, let's bring you in because, of course, while child abuse is covered up here in England, south of the border, north of the border, we have Fornethy case that UK column has been reporting. Hundreds, thousands possibly of women abused over a great many years. And what can you tell us about reactions by the Scottish Parliament?
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Brian. And hello, Mike. It's great to be here today. I just wanted to basically cover this story today in particular because it goes along with this overall story that we're covering around inquiries and child abuse and cover-ups. And it just so happens that last Thursday, this debate was finally on the floor of the Scottish Parliament, which was a very long time coming after 3 years of the petition for the Fornethy Residential School abuse survivors fighting for justice and inclusion in the Scottish Abuse Inquiry Redress Scheme. So since 2022, we've been fighting this. UK column has been covering this for a number of years. They've been denied justice according to the redress scheme because they don't meet the criteria because they weren't abused for long enough, meaning that they were only abused for 6 weeks at a time, or that possibly because they were calling it a holiday camp or a convalescent camp or something like that, and none of that was true. So let's start by watching a few video clips here. Colin Smith was the person in Parliament who raised this but for his constituent, and he called this justice for the Fornethy survivors. So here's a clip from his opening remarks.
There's another one before the committee, petition PA 1979, but once again the government dismiss it. Dismiss its call for an independent national whistleblowing office for children and education services. Dismiss its call for independent investigations into unresolved allegations. Dismiss its call to close gaps in the child abuse inquiry. Whistleblowers ignored, victims ignored, public bodies protected. That's the reality of child protection in Scotland today. Presiding Officer, the tragic human cost of child abuse is incalculable. The lost childhoods, the lasting trauma. As a society, nothing should be more important than safeguarding our children. But for Fornethy, countless other failures by the state expose the brutal truth. We are failing victims again and again every single day.
And another person who did an excellent job of covering what was going on was Fergus Ewing, MSP, who is on the Petitions Committee, and he has been part of the Petitions Committee, which they have been in unanimous agreement for over a year now that this needed to go further. So this is quite a powerful clip from Fergus Ewing.
That this is a palpable, egregious, serious injustice caused to the most innocent girls in the country over a sustained period of over 30 years, for several weeks at a time, has still not been redressed by either the Glasgow Corporation or the Scottish Government. Now, I think the Scottish Government must take the lead. We must accept the responsibility to do that. How it is done is a mere detail. If it requires legislative reform, that must be done. If it requires an executive direction to redress Scotland, that must be done. We cannot hide behind legalistic arguments. The idea that these children were put there for a holiday or respite care, what an insult. But it's also, as well as an insult, factually wrong. Fornethy is a residential school. The corporation advertised for teachers. What do teachers do? They teach in schools. So that argument is just an insult to the victims. It is platitudinous, pedantic, nitpicking, legalistic, and I don't think one moment that the current Deputy First Minister would seek to invoke or stand behind that argument. The other argument, as Mr Smith has said, is that they did not cease to be under parental control. Are they really saying that the parents consented to the abuse that their children have suffered? What arrant nonsense. What an absurd argument. The indisputable fact is that these girls were sent there by Glasgow Corporation. Glasgow Corporation owned the school. They are part of the state. The state is responsible for the abuse. The abuse that...
Now, what I would like to say about what he just said was that was a direct result of the evidence that I collected after spending days and hours, countless times, in Mitchell Library in Glasgow, in the National Records of Scotland, and so on. And I want to credit him again, because if we go back to March 2024, when I was cited back in the Petitions Committee, let's play that short clip from Mr. Ewing.
Thanks, Convener. We're indebted to Professor Dan McCarry for a submission of the 11th of March 2024, and just reading therefrom, she states, the purpose of redress for historical institutional child abuse should be to benefit survivors. Currently, the eligibility guidelines specifically exclude survivors of short-term residential school abuse. This is unjust.
So this weekend, I caught up with some of the survivors, particular Lynn Sheeran and Sharon Cruden, who have been interviewed by Brian previously as part of our series on the interviews with some of the survivors. And I wanted to get their thoughts on what they thought around what happened, because they were in the gallery on Thursday. So let's play their thoughts here just a minute, please.
I think that more MSPs could have sat and stayed and listened to the debate. The fact that the majority, them all stood up after First Minister's questions and left was actually embarrassing. To think that not so long back there, most of them were saying that they stand by us and they'll help us, and we'll fight for justice and we'll fight for redress. And it was shocking to see them getting up and leaving their seats. And the few that did stay, fantastic. We appreciate your support immensely. But I just wish that more of them would have followed through with what they told us a few months back, that they would help us. And that in itself was quite downheartening.
And Sharon, what did you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with Lynn. The fact that all these women had made their way down to Edinburgh for this debate, and just totally slapped us in the face by doing that. I mean, we can understand that some of them have got other meetings to go to and work to do and stuff like that, but not everyone. Just have a bit of compassion and hear it out at least.
Yeah.
And if we make a contribution into a speech of some sort, that's great in our favour. We need everybody on board here for support. But just getting up and walking out was just an absolute embarrassment at the end of the day.
Yep.
So I think this is an appropriate time to point out a couple of screenshots that I took from the recording of the debate. So if we can pull this slide up on the screen, this was First Minister's questions, which happened immediately before the Fornethy debate. Then there was a short pause. They stopped the video recording, and then we came back about 3 minutes later. And what did we see? Just very few MSPs alone by themselves. I think there were maybe 5 total in the entire floor. That's Kate Forbes standing there by herself. And what I would like to do is call out the people who did stay and contribute. So, of course, Colin Smith, Alex Cole-Hamilton, those two were together at Fornethy. They went to Fornethy with the women a couple of years ago on a trip. So they know firsthand exactly what it was like. Of course, Fergus Ewing, who we just heard from, Maurice Golden and Faisal Chowdhury, Maggie Chapman, Monica Lennon. So they all spoke in favor of the women. And then, of course, we heard from Deputy First Minister Kate Forbes. And it's always been the First Minister or the Deputy First Minister for the last few years who have been the ones denying the justice and saying, well, these are the reasons why we can't do it. So if we can just put Kate up here on the screen for just a minute. Here's what she had to say, that she did commit to continuing close engagement with survivors, engage directly with Glasgow City Council because they do have a direct responsibility for what happened to the women, look at how we could provide greater levels of emotional support, see whether the Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry would cover Fornethy itself, and she actually said, in pursuit of the truth. So what I see in her language is lots of empty promises that, oh, we're going to talk, we're going to engage, we're going to listen, we're going to see. She talked about how they will be included in phase 10 of the inquiry, which is going to be looking at the provision of residential care for children in establishments run by local authorities, as Fornethy was. And what's very disappointing as well is that not only were they not remaining in the chamber for the debate, but we also saw very little press coverage of it. We did see here on the 12th of June, which was the day that the debate happened, a statement from Alex Cole-Hamilton's office, who's been supporting the bill along with Colin Smith, saying that we need to open this up to the survivors. And we saw one other article in mainstream media on the Daily Record, which came out over the weekend, which featured Lynn Sheeran herself, who we just heard from. But that is all we have seen. So UK Column has been covering this from the beginning, and we will continue to do so until the women get the justice that they deserve, Mike and Brian.
Diane, just one final question. If we could, how many women does this affect for anybody that hasn't been following this story?
Well, the school was open between 1960 and 1991. The women were there for 6 weeks at a time. And some of them went more than once. So we could potentially calculate thousands and thousands of women that were affected. And we've had maybe stories from about 200 women who are been in the survivor group, but we know that there's many, many more. And so the campaign has involved getting women to speak out if they were there and maybe not even aware that this is going on because of the cover up, because of the fact that it's not being provided anywhere except by us. And we will continue to do so. So we need everyone to spread the word to get more Glaswegian women who were abused at Fornethy to come forward.
Okay, Diane, thank you for